Hi, y'all. Yesterday we finished the book, but today I do want to read with you the author's notice. This will be a very short video because it's just about a page and a half. So at the very end of your book, you'll see after the chapter that we read yesterday, you'll see the author's note. So let's see what this author wanted us to remember in writing this author's note to us. So let's look. In April 2004, an image came to my mind of two boys sitting on either side of a fence. I knew they'd been taken away from their homes and friends and brought separately to a terrible place. Neither of them knew what they were doing there, but I did. And it was the story of these two boys, whom I named Bruno and Shmuel, that I wanted to tell. The issue of writing about the Holocaust is, of course, a contentious matter, and any novelist who explores it had better be sure about his or her intentions before setting out. It's presumptuous to assume that from today's perspective, one can truly understand the horrors of a concentration camp, although it's the responsibility of the writer to uncover as much emotional truth within that desperate landscape as he possibly can. Throughout the writing and the rewriting of the novel, I believe that the only respectful way for me to deal with this subject was through the eyes of a child, and particularly through the eyes of a rather naive child who couldn't possibly understand the terrible things that were taking place around him. After all, only the victims and survivors can truly comprehend the awfulness of that time and place, and the rest of us live on the other side of the fence, staring through from our own comfortable place, trying in our own clumsy way to make sense of it all. Faces such as this one at the heart of the boy in striped pajamas, or fences such as this one at the heart of the boy in striped pajamas still exist. It is unlikely that they will ever fully disappear. But whatever reaction you have to this story, I hope that the voices of Bruno and Shmuel will continue to resonate with you as they have with me. Their lost voices must continue to be heard. Their untold stories must continue to be recounted, for they represent the ones who didn't live to tell their stories themselves. And that was from John Baum in Dublin of 2006. Well, that ends this story. So I want to make sure that you understand how the book ended. The book ended with Bruno and Shmuel on the same side of the fence. And so as they were looking for his father, for Shmuel's father, Bruno became very concerned and uncomfortable on that side of the fence. It was not at all like what he had expected it to be. He expected it to be a happy place, and he saw that it was a very dreary, sad, dismal place, so much so that it made him very uncomfortable, and he was ready to go home, except he had given Shmuel his word that he would help him find his father. And so, wanting to keep his word, they went on their adventure looking for clues, which they never found. As Bruno realized that it was time for him to leave, the whistle blew and the people began marching. Now, this book is fictitious in that there really was no Bruno and Shmuel that had these same lives, but there were many people who were in these concentration camps, and these marches were real. And what they were marches to the gas chamber, and these people were herded like animals into these rooms that the doors were shut, and then the lethal gas or the deadly gas was pumped into those rooms, and those people were killed in masses and masses. And this happened over and over and over again. Thousands and thousands and thousands of Jews were killed this way for nothing other than being part of the Jewish race. They had done nothing wrong. They committed no crimes, and they were treated worse than animals, and they were killed. Well, Bruno was taken up in the middle of this. Even though he wasn't a Jew, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time on the wrong day, and he and Shmuel very innocently just followed along as they were taken from the middle of these this massive group of people, and they were just kind of moved along, having no idea what was going to happen. The adults, especially those who didn't want to follow along, knew what was going on. Possibly Shmuel's father had already been herded into one of these gas chambers and killed, and that's why he couldn't be found. But Bruno and Shmuel had no idea that they would never be able to leave that chamber, and that their death was almost um, their time had almost come. And of course, this is a really sad book, and you might be saying, Miss Walker, why did you want us to read this book? Well, several reasons. Number one, um, learning about the Holocaust is part of the benchmarks that the state of Mississippi says we need to teach in 8th grade. So, obviously we want to follow the law. But more importantly than that, you need to know about the Holocaust. I tell you all the time, you are our future voters. You're not going to vote in this election, but most likely the next election, you'll be old enough to vote. And so you're going to be voting to make some of these laws. You must know history in order to keep history from repeating itself. There are places all over the world where people are being treated just as badly or worse than what we read about in The Boy in Striped Pajamas. You are the ones that can keep that from happening in your country. You are the voters. You are the ones that need to go to the polls. You need to be represented, and you need to make sure that you stand for godly principles and godly laws. And that's why it's important for you to know what happened in the Holocaust, what happened in lots of things in history. After studying World War I, that there were people in this very country that were gathered up and put in concentration camps purely because they came from Japanese ancestry. So this actually happened in the United States. But who can keep those kinds of things from happening? The adults, the voters, and that's going to be you. So you need to know about things that happen in history so that you can make sure that history does not repeat itself. That's part of why we learned about that. And also, we need to remember how important it is for us to treat people humanely. God is not honored when we treat people in inhumane ways. And so that's another another lesson for us to learn. The innocence of Shmuel and the innocence of Bruno, there were many, many, many children who were part of this slaughter of the Jewish nation. And so there were many innocent people who died because somebody had an idea that the Jews needed to be eliminated from their country and other countries. So this is why it's important for you to know about this story, but more importantly, about what really happened in history. Well, I'll talk about that tomorrow in our English lesson. But I hope you have a great day, and put this book in with all of your papers and your other book that you read, the Island of the Blue Dolphins. Those will need to be turned in with your other books as well. And if you haven't already done so, start separating your papers so that you have all of your algebra papers together, all your science papers together, all your English papers together, and all your history papers together. That will help us tremendously to speed up the grading process once you turn your work in, and you'll be getting direction on that very soon. Thank you for keeping up with reading, and I hope that you have a great day today. I'll be back tomorrow.